All right, thank you. Um, my presentation is going to be about how to choose uh, a good topic for your science fair project. And that is important because I believe that there's a quote that says, if you give me 3 hours to chop down a tree, I'll spend the first 2 hours sharpening the axe. Because there's no use trying to chop down a tree with a dull axe. And I think the same thing is true of science fair projects. I've seen so many people spend hundreds of hours working very hard on topics that were never going to go anywhere. And I think consulting with experts or speaking to a science teacher about a topic before putting in all of those hours makes such a big difference. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to explain to you some of where I am coming from when I talk about science fair. So I've been involved in all levels of science fair. When I was in school, I did a science fair project that won second place in the state, and I got money and free tickets to museums and magazine subscriptions and free memberships to clubs, and it was one of the best experiences of my life. I can't tell you I can't tell you my 10th grade science teacher's name or anything I learned in that class, but I could tell you every detail of the science fair project that I did that year. It was and I'm really old. It was really deep, long-lasting learning, and it was my passion, and I will remember it forever. I also was a science teacher, and so I've required and I've judged and I've mentored high school science students. I've been a judge at the county office. I've been a judge at the state science fair, and I've mentored numerous students, including the one you see in all of these photos, my daughter. So my other experience is that my daughter has been a Broadcom Masters finalist, and then she won an award at Broadcom Masters that let her go to Broadcom Masters International. She's won awards at the district, the county, the state, and the International Science Fair. She's been an intern at Naval Surface Warfare Center in Lockheed Martin. She's currently an aerospace engineering student at the University of Colorado Boulder. And from her science fair experience, you can see in the bottom left corner there, she was able to tour the White House, and her guide that day was former President Barack Obama. She's met astronauts down in the bottom right, and above that is the inventor of the Raspberry Pi mini computer. It has opened up so many doors for her. And Dr. Gupta talked about glossophobia, getting over a fear of speaking and becoming a great speaker. Many of these opportunities have come true for her because of the practice that she got with public speaking and interviews during science fair. So I'm going to talk, the reason I introduce her is I'm going to talk about where a lot of her project topics came from. So she's done several award-winning projects on different topics. Some people do one topic for several years, and other people do a different topic each year. There are benefits and drawbacks of both of those. So I'll get into those projects as I go on. So first I want to talk about where not to find a science fair project topic. Please do not go to online science fair project topic websites like Science Buddies. Those projects have been done 10 million times. Most of them are not science projects at all. They're science demonstrations, and they take the science out of science fair, which is exactly the opposite of what we're trying to do. Science fair projects are supposed to be science inquiry. And science inquiry means that you come up with a problem, you propose a solution to that problem, you create a series of steps to solve that problem, you collect data from those steps, you analyze the data, and you come to a conclusion. Going to these websites, they sell you the topic, they sell you the procedure, they sell you the materials, they sell you the information, and they sell you the conclusion. So they're basically turning science inquiry into following a recipe. And not only that, like I said, those projects have all been done a million times. The judges have seen them before. Your teacher has seen them before, everyone has seen them before, and they all know that they came from those websites. There are websites now that will sell you science fair projects that you can do in 24 hours and 48 hours, and they are not a good idea. If you buy a project online and do it in 24 hours, I guarantee you 100 years from now, when you're as old as I am, you won't remember your topic like I do my science fair project that I was passionate about and was invested in when I was in 10th grade. So please don't buy a book about science fair project topics. Don't go to a website about science fair project topics. This has to be something that you're passionate about, and it has to have originality and creativity built into it. So now that I've told you where not to go, okay, one more where not to go. I've been doing science fair for a long time, and there are projects that I have seen over and over and over again. And so that I'll get to that in the next slide. First, the experiment versus demonstration. So if you take Mentos and put it in Diet Coke, and Diet Coke shoots out the top of the bottle, that's a really cool demonstration. But there's no hypothesis, there's no manipulation of variables, there's no data being collected. So that's just a demonstration. Can you make soda shoot from a bottle by putting Mentos in it? Yes. But that's not a science fair project topic. How does a hovercraft work? That's a demonstration. Like building a hovercraft from a list of instructions and talking about how it works is not a hypothesis testing experiment. And it's really not an engineering project either, because you're building something that's already been built, not making modifications to it, following a recipe. Making a whirly-bird from paper. And all of these topics, I'm not making these up. These are all from the Science Buddies website. Build a kaleidoscope. That's a demonstration. Floating a magnet, where you put one magnet on a pencil, you flip another one over, and it floats above the other one. That's a demonstration. Now, figuring out how you can maximize the distance between the two magnets would be an interesting question. And it would probably be counterintuitive, because the stronger the magnet is, the less distance the magnetic field travels. So a stronger magnet wouldn't be the best. A light but weak magnet would probably be better. Making a balloon power car, again, following a recipe, no hypothesis testing, no originality to the engineering. That's a demonstration, it's not an experiment. Can you hear sound in outer space? So that's usually you put a bell in a vacuum, pull out all the air. It's a demonstration that we already know the answer to. So another thing to avoid is asking questions that we already know the answer to. I can't tell you how many times I've seen people in science fair projects who, if their conclusion was true, would overturn the entirety of science because they asked the question we already know the answer to and got a different answer and didn't realize it. Making ooze, a cornstarch colloid, it's just a demonstration. Mix two parts of this with one part of this, you have ooze. There's no hypothesis testing, no variable manipulation, no originality. That's just a demonstration. Making your own pH paper, just a demonstration. Now, using that pH paper to do a cool experiment would be great, but just making pH paper from step-by-step recipe is not an experiment, it's just a demonstration. So here's a list of commonly seen projects that I would recommend that you avoid. Lemon batteries, every science fair, literally, that I have ever been to in my entire life, at a district or a county, has had lemon batteries. First of all, it's a demonstration. Building a battery with lemons is just a demonstration. There's no variable manipulation. And generally, if people do test a variable, it's how the type of fruit affects the voltage. Well, if those people had done the research, they would know the type of fruit isn't supposed to affect the voltage. It's the two metals that you use that affect the voltage. You use zinc and copper, you get 1.2 volts. You use zinc and lead, you get 1.7 volts. I'm making up the numbers, but that's how batteries work. That's just a demonstration. Mentos and Diet Coke, already talked about that. The shape of fins on a wind turbine, shapes of airplane wings. It's been done so many times, and There are genius experts out there with PhDs who have been working on airplane wings for a very long time. Boys versus girls at anything. Whose memory is better, boys or girls? Who is faster at taking math tests, boys or girls? They've all been done before. Most of the time, it's not a very important question. Watering plants with various juices, coffees, Gatorade. It's been done many, many times, and I'll talk more about plant projects in the future. The Stroop effect, which is that little graphic down in the bottom right where you have people, there's a word and a color, but the word and the color of that word are different, and you have to say the color of the word without reading the word. It's been done millions of times. It's not really a validated test for measuring what it's supposed to be testing in the first place, and it's been done many, many times. Which bubblegum flavor lasts the longest, which popcorn pops the best, which paper towel works the best, which battery works the best, which diaper absorbs the most liquid. They've all been done many, 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 many times. The effect of blank on teeth, and it's usually soda. People get teeth from a dentist and put them in soda, and horrible things happen, and they say, see, don't drink soda. But those are dead teeth. Live teeth are much different. People soak the effect of soda on, and they put steak in soda. It's dead steak that soaks for months, and then they conclude, don't drink soda, it's bad for the meat in your body. But there's a huge difference between soda going through your digestive system and soaking dead meat in soda for a long time. And it's been done a million times. Building a catapult or a trebuchet, not only is it a demonstration, but it's been done many, many, many times. Which blank has the most bacteria, keyboards and doorknobs and public places, been done a million times. Antibacterial soap and hand sanitizer, do they work? Also been done a million times, and we already know that they work. So try not to ask questions that we already know the answer to. Like, do a Google search for your science fair project question and see if that answer is already well known to science. And if it's something that really, really, really interests you, then put a twist on it to find a question related to antibacterial soaps that hasn't been answered yet. But this list right here, these have all been done so many times, I would highly recommend avoiding them. Some other things to avoid are small sample sizes. And I put a picture of a plant next to that because often people are testing like which fertilizer works the best. And they have two plants, they have two flowers, say this one and this one. And they put fertilizer in one and not the other, and this one ends up bigger. Well, these plants are different. This flower may have been bigger regardless of the fertilizer that you put on it. It's naturally bigger, and these are fuller and have more leaves. Plants are different. So comparing one plant to another plant, you cannot begin to conclude that it was your variable that had that effect on the plant. If you're going to compare plants, you'd have to compare 1,000 of this plant to 1,000 of this plant. And if 900 of these were taller than all of these, then you might be able to conclude that your variable had something to do with those results. But one plant and one plant is not good enough. Too much human influence is another one. So which baseball bat works the best? And the person goes out and has someone pitch to them and they swing a bat and hit the ball. That's way too much human influence. One of the bats may have been too heavy for you and you couldn't swing it, or one of them you hit a lot of pop-ups and the other one you hit a lot of line drives. Way too much human influence. So you need to build a machine that takes the human out of it. And I've seen some genius machines for doing things like this that were super simple. People who are comparing different soccer shoes or soccer balls, and they just took a heavy hammer, put a soccer shoe on the end of it, drilled a hole in the hammer so it could swing, and they would hold it at the same angle each time, release it, and it would go hit the soccer ball and kick it forward. That is a beautiful way to take the human influence out of that project. You can see the picture down there. There's a baseball bat attached to a really powerful garage door spring, and they could pull the baseball back and release it. And they probably had a ball on a tee so that everything was equal between the multiple bats that they were testing. Takes the human influence out of it. And then that yellow device, that's a device that you can put on the end of a baseball bat, and it measures all kinds of things about the baseball bat. The speed of the swing, the force that it hit, how much vibration is in it. So computerizing your data collection is an even better way. So small sample size doesn't just apply to plants, it also applies to people. My daughter, one of her science fair projects was about a thing called dispositional attitude. It's basically how open you are, how positive or negative you are to new ideas. And this is really important in advertising because it's the difference between if I'm selling a car, should I tell you how good my car is or how bad all of the competition's cars are? And some researchers spent 10 years developing a tool that could measure your dispositional attitude, but they hadn't used it to measure anything yet. So my daughter contacted them, got a copy of their survey, and gave the survey. But if she had given it to 10 people, we monitored the data as it was coming out. If she had given it to 10 people and they were all positive, she really couldn't conclude anything because that's way too small of a sample size. Maybe the first 10 people who answered were all open to new things like dispositional attitude, and so they took the survey quickly. And then her results are biased because all of the positive dispositional attitude people took the survey first. Maybe she has a positive dispositional attitude and she attracts friends who have positive dispositional attitudes, and her friends took the survey first. So she did not stop until she had thousands of responses to her survey, and then the sample size was big enough that she could draw real conclusions from it and break it down into subjects. My son did a project on which side of the brain is dominant. You okay, Maximilian? Because there were rumors that if you're a baseball player, which he is, and your left eye is dominant and you're right-handed, you can hit better because your left eye is facing the pitcher. So he did all kinds of tests, and the first year when he looked at his data, he did not have enough left-handed people because there just aren't as many left-handed people out there. And he had to not submit his project that year because he could not draw conclusions from the 2 left-handed people who did his survey. So if the general rule that I see in elementary schools a lot is when you're doing an experiment, you need to do it at least 3 times. But if you're doing an experiment with people or plants, you need to do it hundreds or thousands of times to be able to draw conclusions about it, because there is variability built into the genes of plants and into the genes of animals, including humans. So just be careful about sample size and get as much human influence out of your experiment as you possibly can. So where do you find a topic? I've talked a lot about what not to do and where not to go. So where do you find a topic? The best place to find a topic or to propose a topic and discuss it is here today with these professors and researchers who are doing the breakout sessions. Email a professor, talk to a doctor, contact a lab, and talk to experts about your project. They can tell you what we already know about that subject, if an experiment is even possible or not with the equipment that you have access to. That is the absolute best way to hone a good science fair project topic. The next best way is read about science, listen to science podcasts, watch science videos, and explore nature. And when you're doing this and you think to yourself, I wonder what would happen if you've discovered your topic. The project that I talked about that my daughter did with dispositional attitude already, that was from a podcast about the researchers who spent much of their career developing this tool to measure dispositional attitude. The project that my daughter won Broadcom Masters with was about the gold-spotted oak borer that's killed hundreds of thousands of oak trees in San Diego, and it's now moved into Riverside County. It's been up in Idlewild. And if it destroys the oak trees in Idlewild, then tourism, which is their number one import, will also be destroyed. It'll be a huge problem. So she listened to a podcast about the gold-spotted oak borer, and she went on to be trained to identify if a tree died from, with the U.S. Department of Agriculture, if a tree died from gold-spotted oak borer damage, or if it was something else like fire or a different disease. And then her most recent, that she won an award at the International Science Fair, there was a podcast that I list in a minute, where a professor at MIT had been doing research on people who have Alzheimer's. And we know that Alzheimer's is a buildup of proteins in the brain. And in a non-Alzheimer's brain, brain waves trigger these cells to clean up those proteins. But in a non-Alzheimer's brain, either those cells that clean up the proteins are at fault, or the brain isn't producing the waves to tell them to clean up. So she used rats with transparent skulls and brains and blinked light at the frequency of those brain waves to get those cells to clean up the proteins. And in rats, it worked. But humans don't have transparent skulls and brains, so she couldn't do that. So she decided instead there's another path for light to get into your brain through your eyes. So she made blinking glasses that blink at the frequency of the brain waves. And she tried it on the rats first, and it appeared to work. And she tried it on humans, and it seemed to work also. But the blinking lights at that frequency could cause seizures, and it caused people to feel seasick and dizzy. So she halted the research there, because you can't go walking around seasick and dizzy all the time having seizures, even if it does help your dementia or your Alzheimer's. So my daughter and her partner listened to this podcast, and they decided there are other ways for frequency sensations to get into your body. There's sound and there's touch. So they created a process for playing that frequency of sound through people's ears. They invented an EEG that they would wear on their head so she could measure brain waves. And then they made a vest that the person could wear that vibrates at the same frequency. And so they also did the glasses as a baseline to see if their results matched MIT's results. And what they found was the vibrating vest worked incredibly well. And this project was started 3 years ago. And just last week, this professor at MIT announced that she's also looking into using that frequency of sounds. So it was an interesting project with great benefit to people who have Alzheimer's in the future, and it came from a podcast. Almost every single one of my daughter's award-winning science fair projects can be traced back to either a podcast, a radio show, or something that we saw on TV or in the newspaper. So here's some sources. The first one is 60 Second Science, and 60 Second Science is where the Dispositional Attitude Project came from. It's literally a podcast that comes out almost every day that's between 60 seconds and 120 seconds about some cutting edge research. Some of them are way too advanced to do in a school lab, and some of them are super simple, like the Dispositional Attitude Project. Great place to look for topics. And there are thousands of them available. They used to break them up by subject, like 60 Second Earth and 60 Second Psychology, but now they're all together in 60 Second Science. They're archived online, so you can go online and see all of the thousands of them that are already out there. Science Friday is a radio show that's recorded and every Friday, and then it's put online so you can listen to it whenever you want. And it's excellent, interviewing scientists and researchers and doctors to talk about their research and breaking news. TED Talks are 10 to 20-minute videos of experts talking about their passion. So to hear someone talk passionately about science is a great thing. The Naked Scientist, it's not what it sounds like. They strip down science, and it's an audio-only podcast, so parents, you don't have to worry about that one. They have a section called Kitchen Science, which is experiments that you could presumably do at home. Now, sometimes they have things in their kitchen that you don't have, so it's not always able to be done in your kitchen, but it's a very good place to start looking for projects. Radiolab is another one where it's not always science. Radiolab covers a variety of topics, but Radiolab is where my daughter got the idea for the Alzheimer's project. They interviewed the MIT professor about her research on Alzheimer's. Nature has a podcast, Sky and Telescope, if you're interested in astronomy. Science Magazine has a podcast. NPR interviews people on the radio and then puts those all online as podcasts. And NPR, Science, several of them, Science Friday is also a radio interview turned into a podcast. There's one called The Skeptic's Guide to the Universe, where they talk about the science saying that UFOs have not visited the planet is not flat, Bigfoot doesn't exist, things that scientists are skeptical of. It does have profanity in it and some middle school boy humor, so that one is for the older audiences. And Quirks and Quarks is another great podcast that some topics could come from. This is a small list. There are thousands, maybe tens of thousands of science podcasts out there. So first determine what area your passion is in. Biology, chemistry, physics, narrow it down a little more. I like small mammals, or I like roller coasters. And then you could probably find a podcast about anything that you're looking for. YouTube videos, podcasts, TED Talks. There's probably one out there, and that's a great place to start. Magazines, Popular Science has been around for 140 years, and every single magazine that they've ever published is free online. So if you download my presentation, which will be available on RCOE and San Bernardino County's websites, you can click on that link and it'll take you right to the Popular Science Archive, or just Google Popular Science Archive. Science News is a science magazine written for middle and high school students. And it has great interviews of professors and researchers and articles. And they were the ones who almost broke the story down in the corner, microbes in the mud beneath the seafloor, which happened here in California. And for a while, they thought that they were like breaking the rules of all the rules that we know of that life follows. And it turned out it wasn't exactly what they thought it was going to be, but the story was pretty much broken. The first time I had heard of it was in Science News. National Geographic for kids, Time for kids, there's a science version, Dogo News, the American Chemical Society has articles for kids. And then if you're old enough, read like real science journals. There are tons of science journals out there, Nature, the Journal of the American Medical Association. And most of those articles, you can at least read the abstract and then contact the professor who's doing the research to get copies of them. Those are excellent ways to discuss deeply an idea that you have for a science fair project topic. Television, sorry, there's just no good science television anymore. So there probably some, like you could find old episodes of Nova, things like that, but most of what's on the Discovery Channel and the Science Channel, it's either Alaska or hillbillies or fake reality TV shows. So I'm sorry, I cannot recommend any science television right now for helping you find a science fair project topic. You may see a news story about something, an update on coronavirus that mentions some science, and you may randomly find some cool science here and there on television, but otherwise there's not a whole lot out there. Science YouTube channels, there are some really great science YouTube channels, Vsauce and ASAP Science, Smarter Every Day. Veritasium has some great ones. Minute Physics is just less than 5-minute videos about like cutting edge physics. It's okay to be smart. The Royal Institution is spectacular. I planned on clicking the link and showing you their YouTube page, but I only shared the PowerPoint with you, so you wouldn't be able to see the YouTube page. But it has thousands and thousands of great science videos. They're all with a little British accent, but you can figure it out. There's one, a guy, an expert in explosives does 20 explosions in 10 minutes and talks about the science behind all of these different kinds of explosions, and 20 cool chemistry demonstrations in 5 minutes. And they're just absolutely amazing. And one of them, I can't pronounce the guy's name, but one of them does a kitchen science series on the Royal Institution's YouTube channel. MIT OpenCourseWare has hundreds of physics and engineering classes that they've recorded and put online. edX has entire free college courses that you can take, TED videos again, and there's a channel called Home Science that are all excellent YouTube channels. There are tons more, but these are the ones that, that I thought of off of the top of my head. And you want to pick a topic that can be answered. And that usually means not asking why questions like, why is there no life on the moon? Or why is the universal gravitational constant what it is? So when you're discussing your project topic with scientists and professors and teachers, one of the questions you should ask is this question answerable? And is it answerable with the time and the equipment that I have? Another problem with plants that I didn't mention to you earlier is that they take a year to go through an entire life cycle. So if you're trying to breed plants, you either have to do it with fast plants or you have to plan on spending 25 years doing your science fair project. That's why a lot of people use bacteria, which can reproduce many, many times per day to do projects on genetics and things like that. And try to make questions with a yes or no answer. Can I build a hovercraft? Yes. So what else are you going to put on your board? You just answered your question. Is there a relationship between blank and blank? Yes. But what is the relationship between blank, and how strong is that relationship is a much better scientific question. That means that if you can't write a good scientific question about your topic, then it might not be a great topic. All right, that's it for me. I'm open to questions. You should know that I can't see the chat while I'm presenting, so I could go take a look at the chat now and see if there are any questions that I can answer.
Mr. Horton?
Yes.
I believe Ms. Kelly is going to post a few questions to you.
Okay, perfect.
You have a couple comments, just a few questions. One says, how can we cure Alzheimer's? Another one says, what about how it's made our Mythbusters episodes for inspiration?
So currently there's no cure for Alzheimer's. Even the project that my daughter was working on was a treatment to minimize the symptoms, but it didn't cure the underlying problem. So nobody has a cure for Alzheimer's currently, unfortunately. Hopefully somebody will figure that out, but first they have to figure out exactly what causes it, and then they can cure it. I absolutely love the Mythbusters. And some of what they do could be translated into an engineering project or a science fair project. But remember, you don't want to copy something that somebody else has done. So you would have to put your own twist to it. You'd have to make it your own project. So definitely it could be used as inspiration. And Mythbusters is finished, but I think you can find all of their episodes online and on YouTube. But now there's the kids version of Mythbusters that is also interesting. So it definitely is a source of inspiration, but you're probably not going to find project topics directly from the Mythbusters.